Okay, hey everybody, this is Grace. And for whatever reason, lately this has been on my mind, and I just had taken a nap, woke up, and it was on my mind again about one thing you seldom, if ever, hear about, and that is the struggle that white women went through trying to work, trying to get to where they could work. They were it wasn't that they were told they cannot work. It was somewhat of more of like just socially unacceptable for certain women, especially middle to upper class women, white women, to work. Okay, it wasn't the same for other ethnic groups, but I don't know all of them, but for white women, we never, when I was at university, we never said color as an ethnic group. We never used color to define any group, like white, black, brown. So no, we weren't allowed. That was incorrect, plain and simple. I was surprised about how many nowadays don't want to be called anything other than, anybody by the color that's associated. It's quite surprising, to tell you the truth. But anyway, white women were not, in a way, they weren't allowed, in a way, because it was such a social norm that women of a certain, who were married and had their husbands, say, worked for a corporation, or they were wealthy, like I said. They weren't. They were told they should be at home, taking care of the home and the children. Okay, it was expected that they would stay at home, take care of the home and the children. Okay. Now, back when I was a child, there was a show that would play every once in a while. It wasn't something that was going on while I've been alive. As a child, even, it was, I think in the 50s. I just looked it up. I think it said the last episode was 1956. I was born in the 60s, so yeah. But I remember it. Honeymoon. I remember seeing it every blue moon. It would come on. Honeymooners. And since then, every blue moon I'd see, for a long time, I'd see an episode or something. And I just remember, how awful it must have been for women, white women. But I'm going to say white women. I don't like to use the word white, see, to define anything. So it's going to be odd for me to say it, to use it. But white women, how awful it must have been to have really, once you got married, how would you leave them if you didn't like them? If it was somebody who was in any way like, I don't think that he was anyway physically abusive to her, but a lot of the things he said and how he said them were just wrong. They were abusive. And nowadays, no doubt it would be called abusive, verbally abusive. But I don't know, sometimes it seems like we're going backwards in time, really. Seriously, people, watch it. I'm not long for this planet, so with my health and all that, who knows? I could live another 40 years. Really, I could live a long while. I had family did, no matter what. But anyway, just thinking about it, and how some people don't even realize, how something like that, it's so cultural. And, I'm going to say just here in the United States, I'm just going to talk about that. And of course it differs from state to state, depending, so many, this could cause something that, but how much of it sticks to us? How much of it just could be like wiped away from us again? Just taken away from us. And white middle to upper class women, or at any level, women who work, now, and so, some women think that it's such a privilege. It is a privilege in a way to not work, but do they realize what they're doing to themselves, even this day and age? You think, are you thinking somehow you're building up something? Anyway, I'm gonna leave that out. But yeah, what if something happens to him? Whether y'all get divorced or something bad, and he passes on. What are you building up? What really? Really, there's so many things that can go wrong by not working. But anyway, there's more to that. It's the mentality. It's that of so many people think that because of white women, they're supposed to mind their husband. I'm going to say it flat out. Adam and I recently, we were at a restaurant, and Adam will do this every once in a while. He was not born in this country, and he was born in a country across the globe where women are not considered, and it's not even questioned. They're not equals to men. They're not. Period. And that's not questioned, really, as to why. From what I understand, I could be totally wrong. I don't name the country. That's his story, and that's his business. But and I know, and I told him recently, I had reason to tell him, to say to him, because the older he gets, and especially if he speaks to his family, it seems like, especially even his sister, she is the big instigator on this. I guess she was so miserable, she wants every woman should be miserable. And she's such a miserable person. Many of his family members are miserable people. And anyway, but I had reason to tell him. Okay, I had reason to say, what it must be like to be born privileged. Seriously, what it must be like to be born privileged. And a lot of people think, white women are born privileged. Seriously? Really? Who told you that? No, really. Think about it for a while. But no, and I said that again later on. He was getting angry. Because, he does this mansplaining stuff all these years before now, until recently this year. I never really thought to call it mansplaining, because members of his family do it too. Not because of that, but that is true, that they do it too. But it just wasn't a way I thought of it before then. But yeah, he gets worse. He's worsening with this stuff. It's like his family pushes it or something, especially his sister, like I said. And I do not appreciate it at all. And you're coming up against a Texan woman who grew up where I did. Big clash. Seriously, I'm not saying all Texan women, but where I grew up, yeah. And don't do that. It's not wise. But really, we just don't take crap off. And I said this, like I said, I had reason to say this to him, and I was very stern. That's how I am. I'm stern. And you're not gonna do that. And anyway, he was on a kick with it, and he wasn't really thinking it was funny. I think he just hadn't thought it out. And we went to a store or something. He did something again. I said, yeah, what it must be like to be privileged, to be raised privileged. And that is what that is. He was raised to believe that all women were inferior, and he can boss them around, and they must answer to him because he's male. I would not want to be raised. I wouldn't want to be raised privileged, if that's what it means in any part. To think I boss somebody else around. But you know, it wasn't only him in his ethnic group. This is not the same as mine. When I was a child, seriously now, when I was a child, I remember hearing that where I grew up, they were saying that women, they just said women, they didn't say white women, but women, but it was kind of, it was really, that was the main ethnic group. I mean, I'm talking like 90-something% there. So we would hear the men, who was 90-something% is white, say that women need to stay at home and, the whole barefoot and pregnant and in the kitchen kind of thing mentality, and not take men's jobs away from them. First of all, they're not your jobs. You do not own them. That's how I felt. I was a little kid. Again, I was a little kid. I would question, what is this? Why is it because he's male and she's female that there's this big difference? And I'm talking a kid here. Already questioning what? These days people say WTF, to something like that. I really wonder if the people of any age right now, any age, do they know this history? Do they have a clue about the history at all of women? And how hard it was to get to this point. Because like I said, that was the mentality when I was growing up. And I remember at one time, I was actually standing down, I was on my bicycle on the road. I don't know why this image always comes to my mind. Maybe somebody had said something, a kid in the neighborhood or something. And I just stopped, and that rolled through my head that somebody would say that women just need to females just need to stay at home and do what is their job, what is their thing. And that's quite a bit of how it was seen as, homemaking, anything. It still is, the second shift. It was women's work. And it would take a lot for women to get out to where, white women, to get it to where it wasn't just all theirs. But it's still, has it changed that much? It didn't when I was at university. I was at university 20 years, but, but say, turn of the century, did it really change much? Well, I was still teaching, but, yeah, did it really? Has it really changed much since then? That women of any ethnic group, I mean, there are more and more, where I live now than I have ever seen in my life before, of different ethnic groups. And some of them especially, I just feel so sorry for. I really do. Because it's obvious. It's made known. It's made known that the women are at a lower status. Here in America, here in Texas even. It is in your face. They're going to make sure it's in your face. You see it. You know what it means. Like I say, I think this is an ethnic group I never knew before, say the past. Really, I mean, it wasn't very common at all until recently. Okay, now I should say that. It wasn't very common at all. So, it's just, it's disgusting. It is. So that this deep oppression, and it's returning. I'm really feel this. Because even like the people I know having the nerve to say, or seeing TV shows, watching TV shows, and they have the nerve to say some of the things that they're saying again. And it's not just about white women. It's about any women, the way that they portray women or women's roles. Or you get on social media, and the ones who want to put out there, this is a woman's place. And that one that I saw when was it? Yesterday, day before. And it was just another despicable, just totally despicable channel that has been, the person has had it since before me. I had my first one, I think actually one of them, maybe earlier. I had one before then, I'm pretty sure. But this month is 11 years that I've used my original channel that I used to make videos. I had channels before then. But this one that I saw, it's just so despicable. Such racism, such sexism, and you could say ageism. It was just despicable. And no, this one wasn't on this about Karens. Okay, that's racism, ageism, sexism also. Because it tends to be always the same. You know, you really think these are real situations, all of them? I mean, the same thing as for that other channel that was just despicable. And it wasn't about Karen. It was just another, it was a old-fashioned, how can you say old-fashioned? No, it was an old prejudice, old situations to demean women, seriously, to put women down. And it was an old channel, I think 2013 or something like that. And but the videos on it on display were new. I'm talking like the past week or so. And it was demeaning women. And of course, a lot of the comments, you could read them, lots and lots of comments, demeaning women for a certain purpose now. Okay, still, it's the same. And this stuff is just on my mind, and I feel so bad. I feel bad for what generations to come are going to have to face. Generations, not even just generations to come, the ones that are left now. Some of it's my generation too. There's not that many people in, my mother's generation, and my father's were older. With baby boomers, and from there on, we're facing it now. I'm still here too. I'm the bottom last year of the baby boomers, really. That were called baby boomers. And but just what we're facing now, too many people. Where are their heads? There are a lot of protests, which right on. Thumbs up. You don't see me, but I got my thumb up here. Here, double thumbs up. Go out and protest. Legal protest. Legal, not illegal. Legal. If you don't want this kind of crap, women are going to be seen again as inferior to men. No. And women worked. It wasn't just all women either. Worked hard to get women to have the right, status. And never had equality, from what I understand. Never so far have women had total equality. What is that? And it was so much, the Equal Rights Amendment or something. I don't even remember it now, because I even thought it had passed some year. Nope, they kept finding to throw stuff in. This is what I remember hearing, so that they wouldn't pass it, because they wouldn't pass that other stuff, something like that. It was so much of a big deal, and it's like everything kind of went to the nah. And like as if going into denial is easier than actually having to say, it's BS. I don't know. But to go back to the front, what I was saying at the beginning of this video is, just think how this helps develop a mindset that is not good. Me hearing as a child, hearing this about women are supposed to stay home, how the inferiority, being thrown in my face as a young child, that I am somehow inferior to that of males I go to school with. We're all in the same grade. These boys, I'm inferior to them and all other ones. What does that do to your mind? Watching TV and hearing that a woman's place is in the home, in the kitchen, barefoot and pregnant. What does it do to you? And then being around people. Some men, Adam doing this. And then later on, by the way, he did something that was exactly like that. And I said, see, again, what it must be like. And I kept saying that. And I think he was, in a way, quite shocked that he kept doing things. Blam, 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 blam. Saying, well, it wasn't doing, it was saying things. And he, not realizing, listen to your words. He was raised before me, he was older than I. But he was raised to believe in a certain way about what a man's role is. This whole mansplaining stuff to me, my IQ's higher than his. Don't be mansplaining. He was mansplaining to me how grocery stores work. One of them, can you believe that? Some of this stuff, I'm serious. My degrees are in psychology and sociology, and he'll try to mansplain it to me. Sometimes he gets on this kick and he'll try to mansplain everything to me. He said, if I hear that word one more time, I said, yeah. Are you listening to yourself? Now you're telling me that I can't say that word. I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to be silenced. And, seriously. And I've known men like this for all of my life. Men who were born and raised here in the United States. I'm going to say white men. And hearing the way that they think, that they are to mansplain things to women. This would not have come up if there wasn't way too much of it. The whole term on it's like, that is definitely it. But it's very insulting to women. It's very insulting. But some of this stuff, we have to watch for it to not be allowed. Seriously. God, I feel so sorry for anybody who, is going to, it takes a while for all this stuff to really get back in place to where it's going to be like, it could be, possibly be like this again. And that women lose their status, even worse than now, to go back to what it was since around 1956. Seriously, women were earning, it was always 59, 60, 61 for decades after 1950, starting in 1950s, when they started seeing what they're earning in comparison to males doing the same jobs. Yeah. And it only changed. The first time I ever heard it, I was like, is that even right? Or is it just somebody trying to bump it up for an election? But it was always 59, 60, or 61 cents to the male dollar when I was in university. So it just changed sometime this century. But I don't know. Are they even reading the right reports? Or is it just, like I said, for elections? I really do. I worry about what, like many people do, worry about what we're leaving behind. Eventually, we all go, at some point in life. And just thinking about that women are going to be subjected to men. And what did these women do when they wanted to divorce? The man would turn to be so horrible, such a horrible person. I studied all that at some point many years ago. And it was not anything like you would want. She lost her in certain situations. At first, I think that it was this way. if a woman wanted a divorce from the man, then she would lose custody of her children. And you know how so many people say women always get the custody. For a while it was not. She would lose custody, because the property, the children was the man's property. Okay. And I'm not talking, well, it was long, many decades and eras ago. But I'm talking about more recent, the last century. So, women weren't even allowed to do things like to get educated, to go to university. I mean, there was some funny things that I remember reading. I wish I could remember all of them, like that it would do something to her womb, going to attending university. But the real thing was that women who went to university put off having children, so they didn't have as many children, you see. Yeah, or they found they didn't want to get married and have children at all. And the people who were doing the research mails were not seeing it that way. They weren't really good at research, were they? But, yeah, their biases. And just not being very good at research. But anyway. And also I remember something about, like, they called them clerks. Even in my lifetime there were jobs and it was clerical work. And I don't know that they do that anymore. They call them that anymore. But it used to be that all clerical positions were males. Okay, they were male positions. And when it opened up to any woman of any ethnic group, but I think it was mainly white women, it became female dominated. The pay went down to the floor. Just went down to basically as little as possible. But when it was males, it was paying a living wage, a good living wage. And that was said back then, that it was consistent. Anytime women, females, dominated a field, the pay did not meet what it should. I mean, teachers, nurses. Nurses actually, some of them do earn a good amount. But it has to be a certain kind, from what I recall. Still, teachers. I mean, my goodness, what could be more important, really, than teachers? I mean, educators, seriously, really. I mean, can we really say anything else is more important? I mean, within reason, we know this. We know that all these other fields are important. Everything from, you have your police, you have your law, your whatever field it is. Okay, they're important. But really, you have to have this foundation of education. And it should not be somebody who's overwhelmed and overworked and underpaid. I have a bit of a clue. Okay? And it should not be that way. I mean, you can kind of see some of the results. They're totally despicable. Some totally despicable people. Yeah, like I've been complaining about. Have no souls. No, however you say it, souls, conscience, heart is very, very little in there. Is there anything in there other than greed? Other than I want. This stuff is bothering me, and hopefully nothing else will come up, and I'll get to do a deeper dive. But in my life, anytime I say I want to focus on something else comes up. So I'm learning, don't do that. Don't say that, because then can't do it. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'll talk to you on another video. Bye.